Well, what's up, everyone? My name is Antwaun Williams, and I have with me here Shekinah Lee.
Hi.
Listen, this is the first installment of Thursday with a Therapist. I'm glad to have you on board. Will you introduce yourself to the people? Tell them something about yourself.
Hi, I'm Shekinah, aka the Purpose Therapist. I'm the owner of Purpose Joy LLC. We are a wellness firm or wellness group that helps to educate everyone around mental health through the umbrella of self-care. And we do that by addressing things like imposter syndrome, self-care, cognitive distortions, conflict resolution, and figure out how we can use those and understanding those areas to transform your life.
That's what's up. So, what led you into therapy? Let's
Ooh,
start there.
interesting journey. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's
okay,
go.
so boom. Which way do I want to go? Okay, so this way. So my dad, he was a mental health technician for years. My mom, she was a nurse for years. And with like story time and all the other things that we would hear as it relates to those things, that's how we ended up learning that's how I ended up learning a lot about mental health. So I think it's kind of like almost like I was raised for this type of thing. And then as I went through different life experiences, I understood how understanding purpose better, understanding how I show up in the world better, and understanding different tools to help me navigate them kind of gives me that sense of resilience. And so once I understood that, I wanted to share with other people. And so that's how Purpose Joy, all this stuff came about.
Awesome. It's interesting because for me, Thursday with a Therapist came about because I understood how important therapy was in my life, and so I'll tell you what led me to therapy. Was just ending a relationship, and it was one of them '90s R&B love song type relationship. It had me, man. And so after that, walking through some hurt, walking through some pain and grief around that, and I was like, look, I wanna talk, and I wanna work through this so that I can properly have in place the structures necessary to navigate this if it were to occur again. Let me say it that way. So I say that to say, to lead into the question, what in your experience is some typical circumstances or causes that lead people to therapy? Or
That's a great question. I think sometimes we kind of like get a little overwhelmed with the question around therapy in
Yeah.
the sense that we try to we think that there has to be something wrong in order for us to go. But therapy should really be, I'm happy that you were able to identify, I
Yeah.
want to get some extra tools to navigate this better in the future.
Yeah.
And that's awesome for you. But I think for some people, there needs to be the understanding that therapy doesn't have to be the reaction that we have to certain life circumstances. It can be the thing that we do to be proactive so we can know what to do and how to navigate these circumstances when they come. So for example, in the same way that you go and see your dentist, and go through your annual appointment and things like that to make sure that things are in order, get your cleaning or whatever the case, or however often you go, or you'll see your eye doctor to make sure that your prescription is up to date. In the same way is the relationship you should have with your therapist. And in a sense that I'm not trying to I don't need you when I'm in the dark depths of whatever abyss of pain and sadness. I need you when I'm trying to navigate how to show up as a better person, how to develop that resilience, how to get my self-care routine in order, how to get these different things in place so that as I continue going forward, I can navigate and show up as the best possible version of myself. And that is what therapists, that's why we should look for therapists. That's why we need them. And that's how they kind of stand that consistent ground for us.
Yeah. And for that person that's listening and they're on the fence about therapy, they don't know how to even approach it, what are some practical tips for occupying where you are right now and also taking that plunge or taking that step toward therapy?
Yeah, well, first of all, you need to know what you want. You know what I'm saying? I think too often you think about a gym, right? I might go to the gym and I realize that, they don't have a HIIT class, right? I need to go to classes and stuff like that. So they don't have that. So I need to go somewhere else. Or I go to a gym and I realize that they don't have the little massage chairs I like to do at the end of my workout and stuff. So I need to go somewhere else. In the same way that you notice that you're there, you figure out, take full inventory. What do I like? What I not like? What type of person do I want to see? For me in particular, it was a big deal that my therapist was a woman of color. Mainly because I want to be able to know that there's some things that are understood and don't have to be explained to you because you know me and you know me because of your experience and your life journey that you're on. So different things like that. I say, number one, take inventory. What is it that you actually want, right? Then once you establish what you actually want, identify what are your specific goals for therapy. So like figure out what type of energy you want, what type of person you want to see, and then you figure out what are your goals, like what is really what I'm looking for. Because a big thing is, like, let's say if you dealt with some type of trauma in your childhood and you're looking for someone to help you navigate trauma, you need to try to find a therapist that specializes in trauma, right? Or has some background in that area. If you're dealing with, let's say if you're navigating eating recovery, maybe you at one point had an eating disorder or one point struggled with substance abuse, you need to find someone that has a history in substance abuse or has an understanding around that, some training in that area. Mainly because you don't want to go to a session and they be talking to you about something completely unrelated to the main focus of what you came to therapy for.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of get that in place. So number one, take inventory. Number two, identify what your goals for therapy are. And number three, and this is kind of more important than we realize, be a little bit more realistic and understand what exactly are what's my expectation of how much time I'm willing and ready to commit to my sessions with this therapist. Do I need in-person or out-person sessions? Do I need virtual sessions that I do once a month, or can I do something bi-weekly? Be really honest about the commitment that you can make right now. And even then, when you start, that might be something that you can navigate with your therapist about how often you want to see them and what that looks like. We are on the cusp, I think, of a great turnaround when it comes to understanding mental health and its importance. But there is still a lot of logistical things as it relates to like funding, insurance, what level of care, gaps in treatment, all these things exist as when it comes down to the therapeutic process that a lot of people don't think about before they get into it and can't, because I mean, you don't know unless you know.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of work with your therapist as far as like what a guideline looks like for you, how often you want to be seen, what kind of time commitment can you make right now, like how can we start to navigate that together, is something that's helpful too. So it's like my top three.
You said something that was interesting. You said for you, a therapist, a person of color was important.
Yeah.
Like, that was the same thing that was true for me.
Yeah.
But what exists kind of in the space to make sure that if that's a important factor for you, that you can find those people that exist in that space in that capacity?
Oh, well, there's several platforms and stuff like that, different directories you can use. Clinicians of color, there's a website that has a directory on that. There's you can go to Psychology Today, honestly, and type in what you want, and you can look. They have pictures posted and stuff like that to find who you would like.
Okay.
There's like several. All the list of all the different ones escape me, but there's so many resources.
Cool.
And when you post this, I can give you the link to some of them, so that maybe you can post it with it so people can understand what that looks like. And I'll do that due diligence on my own to do the same.
Okay.
But that there's like a plethora of resources out there for rosters of just Black clinicians waiting to meet you, waiting to be in partnership with you, waiting to help you get to the next phase of your healing journey.
I also paid attention to something else you said. You talked about you having a therapist as well. Like, why is that important for you?
Oh, it's like a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Like, and the reason why is because I can't pour from an empty cup, right? And there's so many things that come up. Countertransference, which is this idea that while I'm experiencing something with a client, that their experience might be related to past experiences for me, and that energy might go like this in a whole circle. So whether I realize it or not, I might be taking with me some of the stuff that I talked about in session or some of the things that I experienced in session. So because of that being real, countertransference, the vicarious trauma of hearing like some of the stories and things that people go through, and just like caregiver fatigue, clinician fatigue, basic, all those things burn out. I had to have somebody that can hold me accountable to. There's somebody that's in place for me, somebody that can sit by my side while I navigate what's coming up for me and help me to be the best possible version of myself. Like, it's, to me, I can't be a good clinician unless I'm seeing a therapist myself.
That's good. That's another reason that Thursday with the Therapist came about, because I'm a pastor. I'm not a therapist. But I enjoy, pastoring God's people. But it wasn't until I got into therapy that I realized, oh, man, I've been pouring. And I haven't taken the time to replenish myself. Now, don't get me wrong, reading scripture and being in times of prayer is definitely replenishing. But there's that aspect of, like they say, the strong friend needs somebody. And so a lot of times pastors show up as that strong friend in the space that will comfort and guide you and help you navigate things. And, it's important, because I know some pastors are going to watch this. It's important that we have that space to be poured into as well. And so with that being said, what is some tips even for people in ministry that are serving people and this is maybe going to bleed into another episode, but to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
To do what's necessary to make sure that they're replenished.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. So my pastor, what a lot of people don't know, in addition to the therapy role and this role that I have, I also am of the dance ministry at my church. And so one of the things that he told me was so profound. He was talking about how like we minister from the overflow, right? Whatever it is that we're getting poured into us, whatever we're sitting under, whatever that covering is, we minister from that. So I have to seek God. I have to seek God for like what I'm supposed to be doing. What does it look like right now? I have to hide myself in Him. I have a mentors out the wazoo, like for all different areas of my life.
Good.
You know what I'm saying? But then the role of my therapist allows me to not let any of my past traumas impact how I minister going forward. It lets me give me a perspective, you know, for what I'm experiencing, because somebody might be experiencing the same thing, and it helps give me some context to what I'm experiencing, because somebody else might be able to give somebody else is going through the same thing, experiencing the same thing, all those things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop anything. My pain, my hurt, whatever the case, it stays in my session. I have somebody that I can work through that with, and God doesn't have to go through a stopping point because there's something keeping me from being able to show up the way He wants me to show up in this space. And I think, like, if you're thinking of yourself as like a pipeline or a vessel, I don't want it to be, you know, the story of the woman and the vessels, when the prophet told her, like, go get some vessels and get as many as you can. The oil only stopped pouring when there weren't any more vessels. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want my trauma or my past experiences to be the thing that keeps me from being a limitless vessel. So in that regard, when we're talking about ministry, when we're talking about because we're in the work of people. That's the thing that's similar. That's the thing that's the same. You're in the work of people. And the work of people requires you to have a different level of consecration of self and a different level of understanding of self, so you can know where your boundaries are, you can know where your triggers are, you can know what are the things that are going to might be a temptation area for you and things like that. You'll understand that, and you'll be able to hold yourself accountable for the stuff that you're lacking in, instead of like bypassing it because of pride or guilt or shame or whatever. So that's why I need my therapist, in addition to me being in the place of ministry. They go together.
Do you see like when I look at the two, I see similarities. Now, definitely there are differences, but the similarities that I see, as a pastor, you work with people who may have strongholds, people who are in need of deliverance, and people who need, you know, the impact of the Lord Jesus in their life. However, what typically happens when someone is dealing with even, you know, mindsets that they need to be delivered from, is you have to go in and clean up the residue of what's left in that thinking process, that thinking pattern. And so for my side of the fence, it happens through sitting under the word, good teaching, good preaching. But on your side of the fence, it happens differently. But do you see those similarities and see, you know, the opportunity for ministry even in what you do as a therapist?
Absolutely. I think that that's my other space. I think that we're created to create, but then also I think in the same way that God has all these other ways that He shows up and guides us and moves and stuff like that, so do we. And I don't think we were made to be like one singular thing. He gifted us with multiple talents. And so when it looks like, when I say I want to be used by God, it is in whatever I have to. It's almost like as soon as I give it to Him, He can do whatever He wants to make do. The dancing thing, for example, there's all types of spaces I've danced in. I've been a dance coach. I've danced on TV before. All these different spaces, right? But the place that I allowed Him to show up the most, and I gave Him to Him for, is me in the space of ministry.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with therapy. Again, it's like from the overflow that God moves. So I find myself in situations where I might be stumped on a client or don't really know what to do. And the same way that I cover my friends and my family and stuff like that, I cover my clients.
Yeah.
And I cover them in a sense of like, help me show up the best possible way that I can to be of service for you. You see what I'm saying? And allow all of me, none of you, that same prayer that all of you, none of me, that same is that prayer, that same language is what shows up in every single area. It's not just in one, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think they're very similar in the fact that they're of service. You're in service to the people by way of God. Yeah,
that's awesome. Any closing remarks you have for the people?
Go get a therapist. If you need help finding a therapist, hit me up and I got you. If you want to see what the other side of your life can look like, it never hurts to get another perspective, to get some extra support, find some extra resources to figure out what that's supposed to look like. But allow yourself to see who you can become.
That's awesome. For me, I think the closing remark would be the help that we need is available.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
lean into the relationships, the people that are positioned to help you walk through life. And
Yeah.
so this has been an episode of Thirsty with a Therapist, and I've had Shekinah Lee here as my guest. Y'all go in peace now.
Have a great one.